Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. The meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's Office in preparation of the Council Annual Meeting Notice dated January 3rd, 2019, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements. Please be advised that the fire exits are to my right, your left, and at the back of the room. The City has a listening system to assist the hearing impaired. If anyone needs hearing assistance, please obtain the system at the dais and return it thereafter.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman.
Here.
Ms. Fox.
Here.
Mr. Gould.
Here.
Ms. Little.
Here.
Mr. McTiernan.
Here.
Mr. Bartan.
Here.
President Naidu.
Here. Okay. I would like to call on our Director of Parking Services, Rita McNanny, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Rita.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please read the notices regarding closed session and hearings and comments?
Closed session meeting is authorized by state statute, was announced and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised that council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30 and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on Hometown TV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and address, spell your last name, and speak into the podium microphone so that your comments can be understood by all and properly recorded. Whenever an audience or council member reads from a prepared statement, please give or email a copy to the City Clerk's Office at rlicatis@cityofsummit.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to approximately 3 minutes or so in length. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, do I have a motion to approve the minutes for regular and closed session of March 5th, 2019?
I move to approve the minutes.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Great. Okay, on to reports. Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Council President. Good evening, everyone. On Saturday at 9:30, please join me and Council President Naidu, City Administrator Rogers, City staff and volunteers at 9:30 a.m. for the groundbreaking ceremony for the Summit Free Market Building Project. For the past 10 years, the Free Market program has been run by Summit High School students and has kept more than 100 tons of reusable material out of the waste stream. It is also a source for household items for people in our community that need them. This building will be a year-round resource for Summit citizens. I hope to see you on Saturday at 9:30 for this groundbreaking. The proposed Broad Street West redevelopment plan will be posted on the city website tomorrow, Wednesday, March 20th, and will be introduced at the next Common Council meeting on April 2nd. The plan has incorporated public feedback, interviews with landowners, and preliminary interviews with potential redevelopers. It's an exciting next step in the process of redevelopment in the Broad Street West area, and Council and I look forward to hearing your feedback on the proposed plan. As part of New Jersey Local Government Week, we're hosting a City Hall open house on Thursday, April 11th from 3 to 5 p.m. City staff will provide tours through council chambers and police and fire departments. Citizens can learn about the roles of city departments and the valuable work initiated by community volunteers. My office is sponsoring an essay contest among 8th graders at Lawton C. Johnson Summit Middle School with the prompt, How My Local Government Impacts Me and My Family. The selected student will be awarded Mayor for the Day status on Thursday, April 11th. The Office of the City Clerk will lead a mock council meeting with high school students assuming the role of elected officials in the afternoon between 3 and 5. I'm hoping that our first open house will be a fun and interesting event, and I hope to see you there. The city is continuing its successful unpaid college internship program for the 12th consecutive year. Applications will be accepted beginning April 1st through April 19th. Interviews will be scheduled in late April for selected applicants. You can find more information on the city website, cityofsummit.org. The Summit Police Department is now accepting applications for its Summer Youth Academy. The Academy will be running 2 one-week sessions for children's ages 11th to 14 from July 22nd to the 26th, and then again on July 29th to August 2nd. Both sessions will be held at the Police Department with classes running from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. Again, the deadline to apply is April 19th. In response to the New Jersey Smoke-Free Air Act, no smoking signs have been installed in all municipal parks and athletic facilities. Summit Police Department will be enforcing the ban. Fines are $250 for a first offense, $500 for a second offense, and $1,000 for all further violations. And this is per recently enacted state law. And the one area of the public kind of park that is exempt under the statute is the municipal golf course. And lastly, Hometown Heroes. So just a reminder, the deadline to apply for the 2019 Hometown Heroes is March 31st. And details for enrollment, again, are available on the city website, cityofsummit.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I know that the city administrator is going to defer having comments.
I yield my time to you.
No, thank you, since he will have plenty of time to talk about the budget. And for my council presidents, 2 announcements. One, Council on the Road, the mayor, myself, Councilman Vartan, Councilwoman Little will be hosting, as those of you who know from last year, Council on the Road, which is a listening session on March 26th at 7 p.m. at the high school library.
Summit Free Public Library.
Oh, Summit Free Public Library, sorry. Summit Free Public Library. And so those of you who have want to have like an informal chat with us, please come and attend. Second, March is Colorectal Cancer Month. And I want to just do a public service announcement to tell people to go out there. If you're over 50, you should get a colonoscopy. Last year, I hated the idea that I became 50. I hated the idea that I had to go for a colonoscopy. But colon cancer is the 4th most common cancer and the 2nd cause of death among cancers. And so I would urge people who are listening to go out there and do it. With that, I'm actually going to change a little bit of the order, and we're going to do public comments, because I know there's folks in the audience who have some public comments. We'll do that first, and then we will turn it over to City Administrator Rogers to go through the municipal operating budget. So for those of you who have comments that are not on, with relate to issues on the agenda, please come up forward, state your name, address, and we're happy to hear you.
Hi, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Our names are Gerard and Penelope Garcia. We live at 32 Edison Drive in Summit, and we came to you a couple of weeks ago to plead for the city of Summit to stop the water invasion to our home. To our dismay, nothing has been done to find where this water is coming from, nor a way to stop it. The only statement made by the mayor's office with regard to finding the source of this water is, and I quote, City Engineer Aaron Schrager indicated that the sewer line camera inspection will be performed in spring 2019. Well, ladies and gentlemen, due to the severity of the impact this has had on our home, we have needed to be more proactive than the city in addressing this and have contacted multiple specialists in waterproofing and water invasion. All were flabbergasted by the amount of water going through our sump pump, 500,000 gallons in the past 4.5 months, and equally surprised that the city has not been more diligent in finding a solution. A couple of these companies suggested that a faster and cheaper solution to using a camera inspection in the sewers is to put tracing dyes in the street drain sewers above our home. Also considering that the history of the water coming to our home previously was from a cracked water pipes at 28 Morris Avenue, which created a channel to our property. It is probable that the drain pipes in that same complex may have also cracked, contributing to this problem. Unfortunately, it is only the city that can address this problem as the water passes through multiple properties to ours. We hope you understand that we must do whatever necessary to protect our home, and at this point have begun pursuing other alternatives, as it seems that we cannot count on our city to be diligent in helping to resolve this water problem. Unfortunately, the suggested solutions could adversely affect our neighbors, causing the City of Summit to need to address this issue with then multiple unhappy constituents. Madam Mayor and members of the council, we stand before you once again in hopes that you will recognize how imperative this matter is to preserve the integrity of our home and the homes of our neighbors, and again request that you pursue any course of action necessary to resolve this for our community and to do so in an expeditious manner. Specifically, we ask for the following. 1, please conduct a tracing dye analysis this month. 2, please conduct a sewer line camera inspection this month. And 3, please let us know when these tests will be conducted and share the findings with us. We thank you for listening and trust that you will find this urgent problem worth addressing.
Thank you. So prior to the meeting, myself, the mayor, had a brief conversation with you guys about this, and I want to, Paul, can you come up? We're going to talk about this a little bit, and we're going to try to see what we can do here to try to figure this out. So, Paul, this is putting you on the spot. I understand that.
Oh, that's fine.
But
that I'm one of the neighbors, that's okay.
oh, sure. Would you like to come up and speak?
No, I don't want to speak. I'm just here to support them. I live next door to them.
Perfect.
This greatly affects me also.
Understood. If you just give your name, I'm sorry.
Maggie.
Probably.
She knows.
Okay. Perfect. Great. Okay. Okay. So the Garcias, they're asking first for. So we talked about. Let me at least summarize for the rest of council what we were talking about as far as what are the potential causes for this problem. So one is that it's 28 Morris Avenue, which previously had a problem. 2, it could be the American Water Pipeline, which is separate and apart from the city and apparently separate and apart from 28 Morris Avenue. 3, it could be the cities. Or 4, it could be some natural occurring event or some off another site not identified previously, right? So it's multiple possibilities that still exist. So one of the first things they're trying to do, of course, is try to eliminate some of the possibilities, right? And they're proposing one way of eliminating a possibility is to do a tracing dye. Put the dye in, see if it comes out on their property. Is it possible for the city to go ahead and do a tracing dye for upland of their property? Yes?
Sure, Council President. We can, as long as weather permits, because we have to draw water through there. Right now, there's no water flowing through those lines. So when you put in the tracing dye, we have to put in water. So we'll flush water through there. We could do that. We're also going to TV our sanitary, like we mentioned at the last meeting. And that's what we can do to
Okay.
see if it's coming from a city source.
So let me just, I think, just so, I see the reactions from the Garcias when you said about the water. But hold on, let me do this, okay? When you say you need water, that doesn't mean you have to wait for a rainfall event, correct? You can just go ahead.
I could flush water through there.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we go ahead? Are we hearing him correctly? I hope you guys are.
I'm hearing correctly, but 2 of the people who have talked about and came to our home and to water specialists actually, and one of them is really a company that all they do is water testing, and they said that in those pipes, regardless of it's rain or shine, there's always water flowing.
Well, what Paul just said, if I heard him correctly, is they need some sufficient amount of water in order to be able to get it through, right? And he said that he doesn't need to wait for a rainfall event. He can just go ahead, put the dye, put some water, whatever that required number of water is, amount of gallons, and you can test it out. So why don't we go ahead and take the first step in this process and then see where we end up? Because if you end up with no dye coming, it doesn't really make sense to go ahead and go and send a television camera through the city's sewer, because basically you've identified that it's not the city's problem, right? And then we can move on from there. Why don't we do that and say...
But can you go in a private property for that?
We're going to put the dye in our basin and run the water through the basin. If it ends up in your sump pump, it's coming from our stormwater system. If it doesn't, it's not coming from the stormwater system. So the catch basin outside,
Regardless if it's a private property or not, you will go through.
I'm not going on private, we don't need to. We're going to go from the catch basin in the street, 3 houses up from you.
Okay.
If you face your house to the left, 3 houses up, there's a catch basin. I'm not clear as, and I don't want to argue the point what your professional had told you, but storm lines don't have water going through them all the time.
Okay.
That I want to clarify with you.
Okay. The second point in your letter is dealing with, or at least a portion of your letter and what we talked about is dealing with, can the city go ahead, let's assume that it's not the city's problem, then it is either naturally occurring or a third party, regardless of which third party. Assuming that it's not naturally occurring, then can the city go ahead and force a third party to do testing? That I do not know the answer to. I don't know, and our legal counsel would not give you guys legal advice, but maybe from the city's perspective, you could just give us some information.
If we discover that it's from a third party, we can't compel somebody to do their own testing. We can identify that it's not coming from the city sources or city-controlled property. If it's coming from a third party, that's something we can disclose, but then it's really out of our hands.
Well, what we could disclose is basically we can prove the negative, right? We can show that it's not the city's proper.
Right.
Then it's the question of whether it's naturally occurring or it's a third party. And you just heard from our perspective, we can't go ahead and, hearing from legal counsel, force somebody else to go ahead and do testing. As I said, there are remedies available to you as people who are affected by some other entity causing...
If some third party is creating a condition that's adversely affecting your property, you have legal rights that you can take. If we're not party to that, there's nothing we can do with taxpayer dollars on behalf of a private resident.
Okay. So I hope that now answers some of the questions.
So we'll start with...
Dye testing.
Dye
We can dye. We also want a TV, though, or line there in that area.
Okay, so
even if the dye doesn't show up, we're going to TV as well.
Fine, okay. And they would like, can we try to do at least the dye testing this month, get that done?
Sure.
Okay, all right, let's start there. Okay,
Thank you.
Hold on, Matt first.
Mr. Cascades, is there any other thing besides the storm drain that it could be that's the city's? Like, could it be a city water main that's broken or something like that?
No. So the city doesn't have any water infrastructure at all. It's all New Jersey American Water. And I know they've done some testing in that area. They've submitted all of their testing results over time to the Board of Public Utilities, who oversees the utilities. And they have actually sent the letter out, and I believe the Garcias received that letter from the Board of Public Utilities that did say that New Jersey American Water Company did do extensive testing, and they found it wasn't in their system. Some of the other causes of situations like this are underground springs. There's underground springs, there's underground streams as well. When you have a period of time like we saw in 2018, right from the beginning of 2018 to today, there's been a lot of precipitation, rain, snow. That could recharge springs, and then they'll find their way to the point of least resistance, and it could be their foundation. So there could be recharged springs in the area that are coming up from the ground, or even a stream that is now, it's been dry for a while underground. It's not uncommon. These things do happen.
Can I just say that we've lived there for 30 years, over 30 years, and never, ever had this amount of water.
Right.
So I would think that if it was a spring, I don't know, but wouldn't it have showed up before now?
No, not necessarily. That's water's crazy.
But these water specialists we've had, they said a spring would ebb and flow. This is constant. constant.
And it could be.
We actually have,
Well, can we
Because
do
of
this,
the
guys?
amount of precipitation.
Paul,
Guys,
Paul,
we can't
Paul,
go back and forth
here,
that
yeah,
way like
right.
this.
So we can't, we're not going to do this kind of back and forth. So I think what we're doing, though, is if council members have questions, Mike, you had a question, we're going to answer those questions, but I think we have a direction as where we're headed, and what happens, happens with that.
So the only other question I had was just around the camera work, because obviously there's two types of sewers lines. One is the storm water one, and the other is the sanitary sewer. Are we going to inspect the sanitary sewer for leakage as well?
We are.
Okay.
And because I just want to make sure there isn't a cross connection anywhere that's taking storm into a sanitary. What I want to do is just all of the infrastructure that the city owns within that vicinity, I would like to just test.
Great.
And then we could then provide that data to the Garcias.
Right.
And then move forward.
Yeah, I think probably council would appreciate knowing also what the results are, so we know that A, the tests have been done, and B, what the results of them are done. And since we promised them by the end of this month, we'll get it done by the end of the month, right?
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, great. Anybody else in the audience that have any questions of matters that are not on the public agenda? Okay, great. With that, I will consider the public agenda portion closed, and I'm going to turn it over to Administrator Rogers to go through the municipal budget.
Thank you, Council President. So I'd like to thank the council and the mayor for allowing me this honor to present your 2019 municipal budget. I will, for the next 2 hours, give you an overview. For,
everybody bring
I promise
now.
to, this will just be an overview. We will have this presentation and the entire budget posted to the city website tomorrow, so everyone has their binder, and feel free to spend a lot of time with it, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to get into details over the next 30-plus days before the public hearing. So I will get started. I would first like to thank the department heads and your staff for assisting in this effort over the last several months. We started this process back in August and went through the respective committees. And I thank the council members and the mayor for all the time spent going through this this process since, at least since October. And we went through this, and this just gives the public just an overview of what we've done. And we had our public workshop on the capital budget, proposed capital budget, back in December of 2018. We went through the finance committee, then met with all the department heads, went over their respective operating budgets, and we are now at the introduction phase of this process. So, and then we'll schedule our public hearing for the April 23rd council meeting, and which will give the public an opportunity to opine and ask questions at that time. So I'm just going to quickly just go through the goals. Looks familiar. We, clearly first priority is always about fiscal responsibility, hitting our goal of trying to keep it within the 1% range, which we've done over the last several years. Maintaining our AAA rating, which we just did again in February with all 3 credit rating agencies issuing their AAA grade to the city in the last bond issuance. And then we have a contract with PBA, which we've been negotiating since last year, which we were setting our goal to keep around that 2% range. And then on to just sort of technology and what the platforms that we use, and certainly how it provides a convenience to our citizens of Summit. And just have a few here again. It's a little more exhaustive in our municipal budget report that I provide. And to get into all the key actions of accomplishing this goal this year. And then getting into our city infrastructure, we have some pretty important projects that are ongoing and will start this year. Certainly the community center is one to complete. The firehouse design and construction specifications we're working on this year to get to a bid process. and then the Summer Free Market, which we will be having a groundbreaking this coming Saturday. And then certainly the Broad Street West redevelopment plan is top of the agenda, and that will hopefully, we on April 2nd plan to introduce the Broad Street West redevelopment plan, and then we'll go on to developer designation, and hopefully contract negotiations will commence this year. And then just certainly some of the other aspects of what we're doing, we certainly are looking at what the impact will be on the Broad Street East lot and the parking dislocation that would take place when the Firehouse project starts, and we've started those discussions and planning this year. And then affordable housing, which is the primary goal of ours to encourage that type of development in the city. And then just as far as the communication, we're always fine-tuning and how we can improve. Our 4-year contract with Civic Plus is actually up this year. And I remember when I first started in September of 2015, that contract was approved. We went through the total rehaul of the city website, but we will, at the end of this year, be entertaining a new contractual relationship with hopefully Civic Plus, which will then look to employ some new best practices that are out there. One thing that I think cities should be proud of is that out of that website redesign we did a few years back, when you start to look at a lot of the public entity websites in the state now, they're very similar to what our site looks like. So I think a lot of people took notice of our website at that time, and I think we instituted a lot of new, at the time, some unique changes to the city websites, and I think we certainly are a model in that respect. And then on to just certainly our employees and what we do to continue our education and keeping our skill level, and those are just some of the things that we look to do throughout the year. And then on to just things that we employ, education, promotion of what we do through the police department, parking, and then certainly what we're trying to do with our ride sharing to continue to encourage our resident downtown employees to participate in the program. And then lastly, our just customer service, and it's more than just professionalism and politeness. We look at our processes, and we're always continuing to improve that to become a more efficient organization for our public. So these are the things that we look to go through ongoing throughout the year. So let's get into the numbers of the budget, which is why we're here. So this just gives you, it gets broken into sort of 3 funds. It's the general fund, which encompasses most of the municipal services, and then we have parking and sewer, which will follow this. Yes, it's a substantial increase here that you're looking at overall, but when the big number within our capital budget this year is the firehouse, which is $11.8 million, and we'll get more into that toward the end of the presentation. When you strip that out, you're still looking at an increase of maybe about 1%. We also will talk about an acquisition, a real estate acquisition, which is $1.55 million. When you strip that out, you actually see a 2% decrease. So, but for those 2 items in our capital budget, we would be showing a total decrease this year for overall. And then these are the sewer and parking services. Sewer is going down considerably because we had the joint meeting project through your capital sort of contribution that was last year. So this overall picture encompasses all 3 funds, and again, when you strip out the firehouse as well as the Cedar Street real estate acquisition, you're looking at a 2.5% decrease overall for these budgets. So it's just important to note that it is not consistent with our municipal service where we're winding up, which is we've kept it very in line with last year, and there's I'll get into some other the cost drivers, but it's really, this increase is driven by really 2 line items in our capital budget. So This is just a very broad view snapshot of some of the budget points on the revenue side as well as some on the appropriation side. Municipal tax rate will increase this year by 1%. It actually is less than 1 cent on the tax rate, but it just comes out to about 1% increase. Our surplus is even. You'll see some increases in the local revenues, which I'll go through. The municipal tax levy will require, it's over a little bit greater than a point, but again, I will explain why that's not, the percentage increase is not greater than a point. It has all to do with our increase in our tax base. Salaries are going up overall. Not out of line what has been consistently over the last 5 years. When you look at it, salary and wages have probably increased over a 5-year period by maybe a little bit more than 2%, within the 2 to 3% range overall from 2015. And then pension this year, we were up to almost $250,000. So that's one of those cost drivers that certainly provided some pressure on the budget this year. So this is the tax base increase. We saw a $9.8 million increase over 2018. And what does that result in? It's for about approximately $428,000 in total tax revenue, new tax revenue as a result. And of that portion, a little over $83,000 is gained from that tax base increase. And then it's just the impact that it has. And that's why our rate is at 1% increase. It could have been a little bit higher, but for this increase in the tax base. So the rates just give you an overall. These are estimated numbers. It's pretty accurate to where the school district. If you were wondering why it might show a little higher, I mean, the school district shows their levy impact. We also incorporate the debt service that, you know, there is a rate associated with that debt service that plays into the overall levy of the school district. And then we've estimated 2% based upon what has been publicly stated with the county, and then the library that we know is less than 1%. Barely, it doesn't even show up as a cent increase. It's rough, probably a little bit lower. And this just breaks out the rates and the percentage associated with each entity. We've been in that 19% range for some time and remain there. School district a little bit over 50%. And then this just gives you, based on the average assessed value, residential assessed value this year of $417,500. That's according to our tax assessor. And then based on that, what a tax bill would look like based on these estimated numbers and what the dollar impact is. And what this works out to be per 100,000 on the municipal increase is about $8 per 100,000. And then this just gives you a snapshot of the last 5 years where we've been. Pretty consistent when you average this out, where we've been. And then this just gives you the 5-year on all of the percentages. And the municipal blue, school is red, county green, and library is purplish color. Give you some frame of reference here. And then this is just the effective tax rate, which when you take the average assessed valuation, you multiply it by the equalization ratio, which this year is 42.79%. When you look at it that way and you employ all of the ratios for each municipality in Union County, this is how it sort of evens out, and we are the lowest in the county of how, just proportionally speaking, on the equalization ratio. So this gets into the general fund overview. Again, the tax levy is the highest portion of our overall tax revenues, our total general revenues. And where you see that $335,000 increase, but this just gives you the change year to year. And I'll get a little bit more into the local revenues and enterprise funds contributions. So one of the new revenues we have, which is really, it's sort of a quasi-old revenue, new revenue, but we had a cell tower agreement that, and there were some co-locator companies that came on. So that's what we're kind of classifying as a new revenue because it kind of came in last year as a non-anticipated revenue. So that's part of now what we have as a total revenue, which is a little over 80,000 plus. And then just some of the increases, which the interest last year, I think, was a little over $500,000, March, on the total interest on investments. And that had a lot to do with the early tax payment in 2017 as a result of the federal tax reform. So we had a lot of cash sitting in our accounts that were earning interest. But we conservatively anticipated this year we're not going up to that amount. We could have went up just because we just don't have that much cash. But when you look at it over the last 5 years and what we're holding and where the interest rate is, I think we'll meet what we're projecting this year, which is somewhere between about 340,000, somewhere around there. And then some of the decreases, last year, one of the rainiest years we've had in many years, which had an impact on our golf course fee revenue. And then the recyclable field is, I think we've discussed that quite a bit, and that market has taken a hit. And we're just anticipating a much lower amount this year. And then in the contribution category, which there's really two main categories here, local revenues and enterprise fund contributions. Parking services is contributing almost $440,000 more than last year. Some of that has to do with a revenue that we lost in that category, which for many, many, many years, we used to budget a revenue for our debt service that many years ago, before it became a utility, it was wrapped up in the general fund and general obligations. So we used to bring over $400,000, whatever the payment was in that given year, from the parking utility to offset our municipal debt. And that number had been in the budget as a revenue source for many, many years. That debt is paid off, so it went away this year. So we sort of balanced that out where there was that cash that was freed up in the utility, and now we're bringing it over as an additional contribution from the utility. And then just some of the other decreases that we're seeing. And that's that $408,000 decrease. And a big number that has gone away from last year, why it's actually overall, that category is lower. We had 880-something thousand for the community center debt that we got in form of donations. That line item was in there last year. There was also an offsetting appropriation for that on the municipal debt service, but that went down to 81,000 and change this year. So that's why overall that category of revenue is down considerably. And then we go into the levies, which is our largest form of revenue. And this is, again, estimated numbers of where we'll be. And our municipal tax levy, again, over the last 5 years has been, I think it's under 4%. Maybe, actually, no, I'm sorry, under 3%. And the property tax levy, which again, we are under considerably by $1.6 million. That adds on to what we've already have in our property tax levy cap bank. For next year, we'll have about $4 million in that cap bank. On to appropriations. Again, our total budget number is $51 $1,984,799. These are the three categories for general appropriations and what they are comprised of. And then just gives you a breakdown in the municipal operations portion of it, public safety being the largest area. And then the other appropriations section. Our debt went down considerably, but our capital improvement number is up considerably, and that, again, has a lot to it. It's 5% of whatever our capital budget is, which is over $16 million. And the appropriations cap, which always tends to be a big number, and that's where we are this year, to add to our overall cap, which is somewhere in the 7 million range or something. It's a big number. So personnel, we are actually down 2 from last year, and that has to do with the regional health agreement that we have with Westfield. We had a retirement last year of a registered health inspector, which we then, now Westfield's taking over. We are saving between $15,000 and $20,000 this year, having them form that service. And then we decided this year, based upon the technology implementation in the kiosk area and parking, which we are now not filling a part-time position in the collection assistant spot. Salary and wages. This gives you for the really 4 areas. Uniform Construction Code is a trust, but it certainly factors into our overall personnel number. But they are a dedicated trust, so they fund themselves through fees, which that budget is in your packet, but it's not a part of the general municipal budget. And then this is just sort of what we looked at as a total benefit package of what you see when you factor in pension and health costs, what that number looks like, and really what it works out per employee, what we give an average cost, which gives you some estimate of what compensation, average compensation is in addition to salary. And that just includes permanent and part-time employees, full-time and part-time employees. So municipal operations, this is the other, you have salary and wages and now other expenses of our municipal operations and the respective budgets. This is roughly about 20% of total, and then it just kind of gives you a few of the areas, again, a little more detail in the budget report. And nothing really stands out here other than, yeah. And then on the other appropriation side, healthcare, it's pretty flat. I mean, there's this very small increase, but actually the line item that you see in the municipal budget, the general fund municipal budget, is down about $50,000. Employee contribution is at about 1.3, which was the same as last year. And then we look at those who that opt out of the insurance and do a cost estimate on what either they took or based on just sort of status and what we calculate that number to be. And there's, I think, about 17 employees that have opted out. And then these 3 other major cost drivers in pension, which is up almost $250,000. Debt service down considerably, but next year we anticipate, unfortunately, going back up to be 500, almost 564,000. One good thing about where we are with our capital improvement fund being over $500,000 higher this year than it typically is that I can assure you will not be that high next year. So we expect our capital improvement fund to be much lower. And as a result, I think that will offset this increase in debt service. And that was sort of what we were very mindful of when we were putting this budget together, that was happening and what we were anticipating next year. So that should offset that increase. And then this is just our current debt position, what we're allowed to statutorily go up to at 3.5%, and that's what that big number is, but certainly don't want to go anywhere near that. But that is the percentage of the overall maximum limit we could go up, and that's the 0.756% where we are. And just to give you a quick overview of the capital budget, this is the general fund, $11.8 million. $1.55 million is really the two items that comprise most of this capital budget. Parking is same as last year. Sewer is considerably down from last year. And then this just gives you a breakdown of the change. Unfortunately, I just blow it away in administration this year, 100% increase, but that was, you were leading there for a while, Chief, but the Seventh Cedar Street acquisition is, and then parking and sewer. And then just quickly, a few of the items in the capital budget. It's every project's listed in our in the executive budget that I put together, which will be on the website to see every project that's funded. But that's your total for each of the departments and some of the projects that we're looking at, or equipment purchase we're looking to fund. New firehouse, which we were going through our process this year with the architectural construction document phase, that it was funded last year, and hope to get to the bidding process at the very earliest, the fourth quarter, if not first quarter, latest first quarter of next year, and then hopefully starting construction. And then just to show you the location at the Broad Street East lot. And then just the preliminary renting, which we will go through an exercise this year of what that will look like, which everybody will be involved in, and certainly the public will see. And Department of Community Services, the largest number of our budget outside of those two other items is in the infrastructure, road projects, and those are the road projects this year, Butler and those. And then some of the categories that are funded this year for just annual programs that we have. And then vehicle equipment, and some of those. And then there's the 7 Cedar Street acquisition. And again, this is to the public. I know we've said it at the last meeting, but this is a strategic acquisition for our within our Broad Street West redevelopment project area. It was something that came onto the market. We felt the city needed to act on acquiring that piece of property to ensure, I think, a more certainly in the negotiation phase. I think council unanimously agreed with that position that it will help facilitate that process when we get to it. So this is an important acquisition for the city in order to expedite the redevelopment of that area. And then community programs primarily is just more of the security surveillance, some of the park furnishings, and then parking and sewer. And really there's just an illustration of what we're trying to look at, whether we can do it or not, but sort of over the DeForest lot, entrance-exit machines, and they're trying to provide some cover protection for that area so we don't see shutdowns or the arm up where the city is not collecting on what it needs to collect. And that is it. Under 2 hours. It's pretty good.
Very good. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Council President.
So I want to open it up for folks, but before I do, I want to thank Michael, Marge, the department heads, their staff, the Finance Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Little, Steve Bowman's on it, and the mayor, who all I know worked very, very hard on doing this budget. We had many presentations. I think everybody knew what needed to be done and for fiscal responsibility, as well as, you know, this is I'll say this and I'll have further comments at the end, I think, but this budget is thinking about what happens not just this year, but many years down the road, and it sets us up for that, because there's a lot of things that are going to happen in this spring. By the time we get to June, we are going to be in a very, very different position as a city going forward than where we have been for probably a very long time before us. And so it has a lot of interesting components to it. But let me leave it at that and open it up for folks who have questions. I know that we will have a hearing again on this in the second meeting in April, so folks at that point in time want to have questions. Certainly that makes eminent sense, having digested this stuff, but I know this is also stuff that people have been looking at and discussing since our capital budget presentation back in December of last year. So with that, Councilwoman Little.
Thank you, Council President. As Chair of the Finance Committee, I just want to reiterate what Council President said and thank Marge especially, but all the department heads. When I took over as Finance Chair last year as a new council person, I was beyond impressed with the care and the responsibility that each of the department heads takes in looking at their budgets and really being fiscally responsible, being committed to providing services to the city residents, but doing it in a way that does not increase the tax levies and put too much of a burden, and really being so cognizant of that and so careful with the budgets and the money and their personnel, and I continue to be impressed to this day. So thank you all for doing that work and maintaining those standards and doing the work that's necessary to go into this budget, which is a really responsible budget, I think. I just wanted to just maybe explain a little bit further. One of the points that you made is that without these two projects, the firehouse and the Cedar Street, we actually would have gone down in budget. But maybe if you could just speak for a moment about how those tie into the redevelopment, just briefly. So we're doing these capital outlays in this year in order to move forward the redevelopment project, so it's kind of an investment, but we are expecting to get a return through the redevelopment, so that those numbers are kind of not standing alone as 11.8 and 1.55. They're I would see them more as investments in our future that we're going to see a return from. And maybe if you could just explain that briefly.
Sure, Councilwoman. So the firehouse happens, current firehouse facility location is within our Broad Street West redevelopment area. And it's located in an area that if it was to stay there, and I think not to get into the studies that have been conducted over the years, and one that when there was a needs assessment basically said the facility is antiquated, does not provide, meet certain standards. That's where we were. It certainly ties into the redevelopment approach because of where it's located and an area that we are looking to certainly have a vision and a revision of. And so we looked at that as an opportunity to not only address the inadequate facility that is there, but also we felt after much analysis that we needed to look for another location to get it out of that area and build a new facility. So right now what we have in this capital budget this year is an estimated number that our architects have provided an estimate on last year, and it doesn't, we're not spending that money this year. We will have to, it recognizes it as a project that the city would, through this budget, approve. But it does not, we are not looking to authorize, we're not going to look to the council at this point to authorize any funds through a bond ordinance. It just is recognizing the fact that this is what we're doing, and it's playing into off of what we already are moving on from last year's capital project through the architectural designs and construction bid specification creation. So that's part of it. So it's tied to the redevelopment area, and it's tied to a facility that is over 100 years old. And what we're looking to do is we've looked to another city asset of over on the east side, which is what the location, the ideal location that we identified. And the 7 Cedar Street, again, as I stated, was a building that is located right behind the firehouse. When you look at that area, it's in sort of the middle of that key area of redevelopment. So we felt it was important for us to move on to acquire, and then gives us some leverage to negotiate with a future redeveloper instead of trying to have a redeveloper negotiate with another third party in this process. So that's why we are recommending, and we did recommend to the council last council meeting to at least approve the purchase contract agreement execution, and now we're need to put in our capital budget because we will have to spend money, and assuming we close on this at the end of April, which is our projected timeline. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilman Gould.
Thank you. I'll reiterate my thanks for the excellent work and add on the Finance Committee, which has done a lot of the heavy lifting on this. So I want to talk about ratables. I know we've had an increase in ratables. I'm pretty confident in what it is, but can you talk a little bit more about our ratables story and what's the forecasting? What are the drivers of those increases in ratables, and what's the forecast for ratables going forward, especially if we can get this redevelopment going?
So one of the challenges the city's had over the last few years is certainly tied to the Celgene West property and the settlement that was that we engaged in a few years ago. That site, since 2013, has lost over $130 million of assessed valuation. So it really is remarkable how the city has grown in value each year since. I mean, it maybe one year it went down a little bit, but we've maintained a very healthy market, not just in residential improvements, but also in the commercial area, which makes up a small part of that, of our base. I mean, the residential component of our tax base is 83%. So it is a substantial part of our tax base, and there has been a lot of growth in that area. But there's also been additional improvement assessment levied against other commercial buildings, just by whether it's major gutting of a building or it's been new buildings. Certainly 466 comes to mind, which is something that went on last year. Celgene has done a lot of work on their East Campus that has helped. We will come to an end next year with that settlement and it's been sort of a clawback of roughly about $19 million each year. Next year, it's the last year of that settlement. So based on what they have proposed to the city in terms of redevelopment over on that site is critical. Now, we know that they're in an acquisition sort of negotiation stage of being acquired. But I have not heard any indication that they're going to deviate from what they are proposing, at least on the West Campus of redevelopment. So that's a very important piece for the city of what goes on over there. But we've had a healthy growth in our tax base, considering what we've lost. So
right, and just that was my question really. From my understanding, we had an increase of about $10 million in ratables. And the whole goal of the redevelopment, the Broad Street West redevelopment project, I mean, it's not the whole goal, but one major goal is to increase ratables in
not so much ratables as it is about municipal tax revenues. It's really about municipal tax revenues. So if the council decides to go down a long-term tax abatement, which is what you commonly hear a pilot. What that provides for is the improvements are not assessed in that area. It's the land value remains of what it was existing at that time the pilot agreement is actually executed. But you're looking for to get a percentage of the gross revenues from a residential project or commercial development of percentage. That's substantial because the city can get up to 95% of that number because you can get 95% of that, and the county gets their 5% of it. So there's substantial municipal tax revenues to be gained out of a redevelopment. That's why many municipalities go down that road.
Right. Thanks. I was just putting in context what Councilman Little said about this is an investment. It is a big cost up front, but it will have big rewards. And not like 30 years down the road, a few years down the road.
Yes, you're spending money on it. It's substantial. It's a big number, the firehouse, what we're looking at. But considering what, the facility that it is and what it will provide for many decades, getting that out of an area that you're looking to redevelop and get substantially more out of that right now, we get very little out of that whole area in form of municipal tax revenues. So there's substantial upside to that redevelopment area, which is why this council has pursued this over the years.
Right. If you'll permit me, I'd like to ask one more question. I don't actually understand the school district debt obligation on slide 24.
So Summit is a type 1 school district. The city is required to show the debt. We actually raise, when we go out for an issuance, we actually raise the school debt, long-term debt for them, short-term debt. We handle all of that for the school district. If it was a type 2, they would handle all of their issuances. So we are required to put it in that line item in the budget. What happens is that it gets backed out because ultimately it gets raised in their levy through their tax rate. So we have to show it in our budget, but it will come back. If you look at the budget and how it is backed out of that, our number, our overall budget number, it gets backed out of that number because they ultimately pay through their levy that portion.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone else? Mike.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate all the thanks that went on earlier. So to the Finance Committee, thank you for steering that. This is a big lift, and obviously to the department chairs, Michael, Marge, thank you very much. I know how hard this is. I sat on finance for a long time, and this is consuming. So thank you for all of that, and thank you for a great, budget presentation and the numbers. And you always think about budgeting. When we sit up here on this dais and we decide what we're going to tell the taxpayers how much they have to contribute to services, it's a big deal. People, it's expensive to live in New Jersey, and it's easy to provide services, but it's not easy to provide services and do it in a fiscally responsible way. And to do both is difficult, and that's really hard work. And consistently, the municipality has continued to keep their tax rate below the 2% cap over the last 10 years. That's not easy to do when costs go up. We all see it in our daily lives, and but it's very, very important if we want to be able to keep affordability where it needs to be. And I wish all areas of our local government would look at that the same way. The cap is there for a reason, and it's hard work to keep it below 2%. But it's work that needs to be done. I think Councilwoman Little said it appropriately when we introduced an appropriations cap levy the other week, that busting a cap or going into a cap bank should be used for emergencies or unforeseen events. I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I'm happy to see our budget here does not do that. The school budget, unfortunately, does do that. And that's, I think, kind of problematic. But going back to the budget here, Michael, I just had a couple of questions around some of the revenue side. So you explained about the enterprise fund, particularly parking. And I know that, was it the Broad Street Garage debt services have finally paid, we've paid all that off. So that's great. So now we have a parking garage, we've paid off the thing. So And the way obviously our accounting works, they pay us for the debt service part, in years past, and then we paid the principal and interest out of our operating budget, correct?
So just to clarify that point, because I think it's important. So at one time before the city created the utility, parking was a part of the municipal budget, operating budget, the general fund budget. And when they took that debt out, it was a part of the general fund municipal debt. So when they created the utility, that debt was still there. The debt obligations and the associated payments, annual payments. Since it's now funded by fees, what the city created some time ago was that, and rightfully so, that amount would come back into the municipal budget as a revenue source. And that's that $408,000 as of last year that was there, and that's been there for many years. Well, it's now gone because the obligation has been fully amortized, right? So it's now paid off. So that was a loss of revenue of $408,000. And so now when we're looking at the utility doesn't have that $408,000 appropriation. And so and certainly the utility has a very healthy financial condition and surplus. So we did increase that amount a little, approximately about $400,000 to come into the current fund to provide a revenue source that we ultimately were relying on for many years, and it's
right. But from the general fund's perspective, we don't have that revenue coming in,
right?
But we also don't have the cost associated
Correct.
Going out.
Correct.
So those things just net out, right?
Yes, it's a net out.
So net for the city's operating budget, we now have an extra in this budget at least $400,000 that is a net add from the parking utility
Correct.
to fund other city services.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So I guess, when I think about that, that's great, and I'm glad that the debt's paid off, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But, looking at that when we think about planning, when we look at all these development all the so-called parts of the Broad Street West, there's a parking garage in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. And what we are hoping is that developers will pick up some of that, but we don't know if it's going to be, how much of that's going to be. So I know we will more than likely be incurring some sort of debt down the road for a parking facility.
And that's a good point that perhaps I failed to state before, which is those two cost, or at least what we're planning right now when we're looking to build a firehouse or acquire this property, we expect to get revenue back. When we sell the 7 Cedar Street, I mean, that certainly will be our intention. When we sell the land where the current firehouse is, there will be monies that come back to offset that cost in the future. So that's an important point to make and to keep in mind. So, and then the parking, again, that's going to be a negotiation that can morph into many things in many ways to structure it.
Great. And then I just was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit. What one slide I thought was great was our health care costs. You hear stories all the time about people getting blindsided by huge increases in health care, and I know the state had the employees contributing over the last several years. That was a big pressure point that was taken off of municipal budgets over the course of the last several years. That's done now. So I just was wondering how you can comment on how that health care number played out.
Sure. Cities in the state health benefit plan, fortunately for the last few years, it's been fairly stable. I mean, flat for the most part. And the contribution portion of that started in 2011, and 4 years of a phase-in, and we're phased in, and probably employee contributions are $1.3 million to offset that $4 million total cost, gross cost.
And then and the pension side you mentioned, that's just so the people at home are aware, that's just a number that the state gives us, correct?
Correct, and that number is tied to 2017 salaries. It's not in the given year. It's 2 years, a lag time period of 2 years.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from this side of the of the dais? And don't feel obligated. That just means that next time, the next hearing, it's only on this side we can ask questions. Madam Mayor.
I actually just want to add my thanks, and being in and around City Hall a lot, I know the department heads worked really hard on their numbers, and there's also a whole group of people who spent a lot of hours proofreading. So we want to thank them as well. And I'm very proud of this budget, and I really appreciate all the work that everyone's put into it. It's I hear people all over town talking about how things are running smoothly. A neighbor just actually stopped me. He said he's lived here for 26 years and feels so great that things like the four-way stops and the sidewalk improvements are happening. So I know how hard everybody works, not just to get this budget, but then to spend the money really wisely throughout the year. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay,
Steve.
yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
Just one quick one, Matt. The one thing I wanted to state is, thanks to everything else, but I was really impressed by, as much as the capital budget has gone up, take out the firehouse and everything like that, I'm amazed at what we are forecasting to do and how we're going to maintain the roads and the infrastructure. And I really want to thank not only the Works Department or the CAP group there, but all the CAP department heads, because we're going to get a lot done at really and maintain the level of quality that we have here. So I really want to get that out to everybody as well. So that's my only comment.
Thank you, Steve. Matt, please.
I just want to send out a very special thank you to Rita McNanny for reducing payroll by one position through attrition, which is the best way to do it.
Okay.
Gold star.
Anybody else? Okay. I just, as I said, I'll close, and I think Councilwoman Little said it best. This is an investment budget, right? So this is looking into the long term. A couple of things I will reiterate. I think you mentioned this previously, Michael, but the 7 Cedar Street, that's going to remain a taxable property, and therefore, even when we, assuming that we will acquire it, and the due diligence will come through fine, it'll still remain on the tax rolls and will be part of the redevelopment. Secondly, and I think important for folks who are listening, 2 different concepts were spoken about with regard to redevelopment as far as sources of revenue. One is the pilot, and the other is the sale of the property. The sale of the property is more immediate. Pilot could be over a longer term period of time. I think especially when thinking about the investment that we're making with regard to the fire station, as well as the 7 Cedar, but certainly the fire station, I've been very clear that my concept of that investment is because of the Broad Street redevelopment, and that it is completely tied to that concept, because I think when you look at how that area is, it makes complete logical sense. The fire station sitting there right in the smack dab center of it. And so to me, this budget would look very, very different if we were sitting in December of 2019 than sitting here in March of 2019, because by that point in time, hopefully, we will have resolved many of these things that will come up in the next couple of weeks and months with regard to redevelopment, and we will know at the end of 2019 where we stand as far as how much we're going to be hopefully getting from the sales of these properties to offset the cost for the fire department new building, and what that means, and as well as what the long-term revenue projections from a pilot would be. So it's in a way, it's both an investment budget as well as it is a budget that if folks are saying, wow, look at that number, that seems high, yeah, that's just a temporary fact of where we're sitting today. But if we were sitting here at the end of the year, we would be looking at a very different type of budget and a different set. And I think the fact that we're taking those 2 strategic investments out, and we're talking about a 2.5% decrease in capital, while, as Steve pointed out, making so many different improvements and having a community center open this year, I think speaks volumes to how we have been able to achieve things. So thank you again, Michael. We look forward to a hearing and having the public. For those of you who are listening out there, if you want to come to the second meeting in April to talk about the budget. We're happy to hear any and all comments about it. And with that, I'm going to move on, and let's go on to the rest of the agenda. So we have an ordinance for introduction tonight, which will be heard at the next council meeting in April. And Councilwoman Fox. Huh? Oh, absolutely, I'm sorry. I just was so enthusiastic about getting this moving along.
An ordinance authorizing a sublease between the City of Summit and the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition.
Now, Council.
Okay, thank you, Council President. This is Ordinance 5903. This ordinance authorizes a 5-year sublicense agreement between the City of Summit and the New Jersey Bike Walk Coalition for the construction, maintenance, and operation of a bike shelter and locker structure on property licensed by the city from New Jersey Transit. It's in the location where the existing bike lockers are, and those will be removed, and the coalition will build a shelter that will hold 36 bicycles, and it will be operated by a key fob system, so the people who have their bicycles there will be able to access their bicycles that way. This project has been in the works for a long time, and there have been a lot of people working very hard on it. And I think this will be a great addition to Summit. It will encourage cycling, and which is already happening, but it's just part of the culture we're trying to encourage with cycling and walking and everything else. So I enthusiastically move this ordinance for introduction.
I second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. McTiernan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Naidoo?
Aye. Okay, now moving on to ordinances. The first are the series from finance related to budget, related to issues. So I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Little. Councilwoman Little, all yours.
Thank you, Council President. The first finance resolution, number 6336, is to introduce the 2019 municipal parking and sewer operating budgets that Administrator Rogers just very succinctly and capably explained to us, and to establish the hearing date for April 23rd for public hearing date. So I ask that we move this resolution for approval.
I second it.
Okay, any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. McTiernan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Naidoo?
Aye. Okay, finance number 2.
Thank you, Council President. Number 2 is Finance Resolution 6342, which introduces the 2019 Special Improvement District budget and again establishes a hearing date of April 23rd. The SDI budget is, the SDI is the organization that manages Downtown Summit and does the marketing for them. Their budget is a total of $386,000 approximately, which is a decrease a little bit from the 2018 budget. Primarily, the fees for the budget come from assessments from the downtown businesses, along with vendor fees primarily from the Summit Farmers Market. We'll be presenting this in more detail at the hearing, but I just want to give you a quick overview, and I would like to move this resolution for approval.
Second.
Okay, any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. McTiernan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Naidoo?
Aye. Okay, finance number 3.
Finance Resolution 3 is number 6361, which authorizes transfer of appropriations within the operating budget. This one is from City Clerk's budget to technology. It's a small amount, 200, but these are the kind of accounting, budgeting motions that happen at this time of year, and I believe this is the last of these. So I said that last council meeting, and I was incorrect. This is the last one, and I would like to move this for approval.
I second it.
Any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Fox?
Aye.
Mr. Gould?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. McTiernan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Naidoo?
Aye. Okay, finance number 4.
This is to, finance number 4 is to certify budget compliance requirements. And this is something that we do every year, but the Division of Local Government Services annually performs budget reviews for municipalities. For those municipalities which are in sound fiscal condition, which I'm happy to report that Summit is one of them, a formal review is only required every 3 years. And in the in-between years, the municipalities certify that they have themselves reviewed the budget and made sure that it is in compliance with all the statutory requirements. So we have done that, and I would like to move this resolution that certifies that we have complied with all the budgetary requirements and move this for approval.
Second it.
Okay. Any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Do you want to bundle 5 and 6?
Sure.
Okay.
Finance resolutions number 5 and 6 authorize execution of license agreements for use of sidewalks. Both are for the office here in Summit. One is for the portion of the office that does business as the office, and one is for the portion of the office that does business as Piatinos. So I would ask that we approve these resolutions.
Second.
Any comments from members of the council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, further discussion? Oh, Mike.
I love outdoor dining and drinking.
So do I. I was going to say, it's going to be a problem if we don't authorize this, because otherwise I won't get seating somewhere. So, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On to law and labor. Councilman Bowman, do you want to bundle the first two?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Council President. Labor 1 and 2 is Resolution 6266 and 6344 is to extension of sick leave for our Division of Public Works individual through July 19th and for parking services through March 2nd. The March 2nd employee has come back to work. We hope they have a speedy recovery, and as we discussed in closed session, I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 3.
Our next one is resolution number 6362 is to declare a vacancy. Our municipal court judge, Judge Brookhagen, has retired after 29 years. His effective date is May 1st. We will be working with New Providence and Berkeley Heights to replace our judge. We are declaring a vacancy as we discussed in closed sessions. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Community programs and parking services. Councilman Gould.
Thank you, Council President. The Junior League has graciously awarded us a grant of $5,000 for the Summit Community Center for a couple purposes. The main purpose is for opening up a secondary location of GRACE, which stands for Giving and Receiving Assistance for our community's essential, basically providing food for those who need it. There's a lot of other ancillary benefits as well, such as healthy cooking classes for the locals and serving as a warming station in the event of power outage. So there's a lot of upside, no downside, and I move this resolution for approval.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any comments from members of council? I will say, if folks remember, back in December of last year, Amanda Block came in who started GRACE, along with, I think, a representative from the United Way to talk about the need for of hunger that exists in our community, and the fact that we are having another location where people can get food is great, I think, and especially that it's in the community center. So any comments from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we have a series of capital projects. Councilwoman Fox.
Thank you,
Lead us
Council
off.
President. So Capital Projects Resolution 1, number 6372. This resolution sets the sewer use charge for 2019 for Summit and New Providence sewer users, as well as industrial users within Summit. Last year, we passed an ordinance allowing the annual fees to be set by resolution instead of passing an ordinance each year. So this is the first year we're doing it this way. For Summit residents, the fee is $271 per household, and we've also changed the due date, so it is now due by June 15th. And this charge is based on charges from the joint meeting of Essex and Union counties, which is where our wastewater is treated, and also the city's sewer operating budget. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Mike?
I don't have my sewer bill from last year, but what is the increase from year to year?
Yeah, I was wondering.
Paul, do you want to take that one, please?
Council
Yes.
President. Councilman McTurnan, per household?
Yeah, so for the $271, what's that up from last year?
It's about $24 per household here in Summit, and about $30 for the New Providence households.
So that's What is that on a percentage basis? Is that up like 8%?
Right.
And I mean, this has been running around 2 to 3.
Right, so what drove that are some increases that we received from the joint meeting, but our own operating budget as well has increased some.
Paul, since you're up there, I have a question. The New Providence, do the residents New Providence pay $271, or do they pay a lower amount?
They pay $234.
What's the difference?
Theirs is based on, they meter theirs is based on flow, ours is based on units. And one of the other drivers for the increase, Councilman, was Broad Street East has now come off an industrial use and is just offices. So they're calculated the same way a residential unit's calculated. So we lost a little revenue there from their usage.
What do you mean Broad Street East?
Their East Campus,
Celgene East. Celgene East.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Celgene East, so their West Campus is still an industrial use, which is much different than a residential. Their East Campus now is calculated per unit, like typical to a residential unit now.
But why is that the case, Paul?
Why did it change?
Why did it change?
Because the use changed there over the years, so they're no longer, we can no longer charge them an industrial use. It's
just
all offices now.
I see. So do you need some kind of manufacturing in order to be considered industrial?
Yes. So we have about 6 that we are charged through this budget as industrial users.
Right.
And now we're down to 5 because the East Campus, Celgene East Campus came off. And now there's a component that they use to come up with a residential unit for those. So we lost some there as well. And that's where you saw it go from the 2% to 8%. Between the two, the joint meeting, our operating budget, and the loss to their the revenue coming out of East.
Yeah, I mean, that's, don't like to hear our fees, this is a tax, basically. But I would say our forefathers' investment in the joint meeting back in the 1920s, I mean, it's paid dividends for decades. I mean, if you go to neighboring municipalities, they pay multiples of this for their sewer. So it's unfortunate it's going up as much as it is.
Right.
Hopefully that won't continue.
Paul, you said New Providence meters versus ours does it on units, right? So question, if we were to do it meters, would that change what our number is? Would it go down?
See, they can meter coming in their force main. It would be difficult for us to meter. The joint meeting actually does meter going out of Summit.
Okay.
But what we use is a calculation per unit.
Okay.
I mean, we could look at volume as well, but I'm not certain there'll be a savings there.
Maybe it wouldn't be bad just to do the exercise to see if there is a reduction, right? Because. Anybody else have any questions? I'm sorry, Steve. I mean,
no. I know how much you love sewers.
I know. Well, I was just going to say to the point of Paul is the joint meeting does a pretty good job of controlling their expenses, and they've done it in the past. I mean, they even buy used vehicles to run around. But this year was unusual in that they had a pretty good size increase, and that's due to maybe not as much maintenance as what they should have done in the past, so that is what's going on, and so.
So they're doing catch-up.
They're doing some catch-up, if you will. And I don't, I'm not going to say it, but I don't anticipate. Yeah, I don't expect. I don't anticipate future increases to Councilman McTurnan's point, if you will.
Understood. Matt.
Also, Paul, if I remember from our committee meeting, there's some advantages to doing it by unit rather than by meter, which I would love for you to reiterate.
So I was going to lead into that then. So meter, when you have a wet year like this year, those numbers may have looked a lot different.
Oh, okay.
Much higher.
Got it. Okay.
Right, so in other words, having it by the number, it's
By
sort of
the
a
unit,
hedge.
by the unit at joint meeting is, you benefit by going per unit versus flow. Flow would be, it would have been very high this year.
Right. Okay. Good. All right. Anyone from the public have any questions? Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Paul. Capital projects 2.
Thank you, Council President. Resolution 6302, this resolution authorizes the city to award a contract for Oakland Place and Linden Place Improvement Project. The city received 17 bids on this project, and the low bidder was JTG Construction of Newark in the amount of $534,020. We've not worked with this contractor in the past, but have received positive references from other municipalities in the area. Funding for this project is available through the 2018 capital budget. I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay. Any comments from or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Capital projects 3.
Thank you, Council President. Capital Project 6332, this resolution authorizes the city to award a bid for 2019-2020 professional landscaping services to D'Onofrio and Son of Maplewood in the amount of $158,050. This is a 2-year contract, and it covers 13 locations for grass cutting, fall leaf removal, and spring cleanup services. The contract can be extended for one more 2-year term at our option. We only received 1 bid for these services, but we've used D'Onofrio in the past and have been pleased with their services. I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay. Any comments or questions from members of council? My only question, I'll have a comment and a question. Is this basically the same amount as last year's numbers? Okay,
yes.
That's fine. And the second thing I would say is, I know that some of these areas obviously are like the village green and all the playing fields and all of that kind of stuff. But I would say that to the areas that we could possibly return to native vegetation or pollinator gardens or things that don't require us to constantly spend money, we're going to have a authorization soon about fertilizing and treatment and all of that. But those places that can be reduced as far as having necessarily, just for the sake of having grass, we can improve the environment and also reduce costs. And I think we should start looking at those places as a benefit. Okay. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 4.
Okay, capital projects, resolution number 4, number 6296. This resolution authorizes the city to authorize a 1-year contract for professional forestry services to the Shade Tree LLC and John Linson for an amount not to exceed $50,000. The Division of Community Services posted a request for proposals, and the Shade Tree LLC was the only response. The city forester is typically scheduled 7 hours a week to review planning and zoning board applications, complete the hazardous tree survey, locate city trees and locations for new city trees and their procurement, and reviewing construction plans, grant applications, and other forestry-related tasks. This contract is retroactive to January 2019 and extends throughout the year. It also provides that the professional liability insurance requirement be waived to $1 million. And this has been agreed upon by the city's risk manager. This is the amount that has been continually approved in past awards to Shade Tree LLC. But last year in 2018, it was $40,000, and the aggregate dollar amount will increase because of the work done on the city's for the zoning board and the planning board. So that's why it requires council authorization. I move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
5.
Okay, I'd like to bundle resolutions 5 through 8.
Perfect.
Okay. These authorize the purchase of materials through cooperative purchasing systems. 5 through 7 authorize purchase of red dyed diesel, landscape treatment and fertilization services, and unleaded gasoline through the Somerset County Cooperative Purchasing System. Resolution 8 authorizes the purchase of bulk rock salt through the Union County Cooperative Purchasing System. And these purchases through cooperative purchasing systems save the city a lot of money. So it's great that that DCS spends as much effort as they do finding us the best prices for all these items that we need to keep the city running. So I move this resolution.
I second.
Okay, any comments or questions from members of council? My question, Paul, given that today is the last day of winter, how did we do vis-a-vis the winter this year?
Just jinxed us.
Yeah. I know, I realize that. Thank you, Chief. I realize that tomorrow, huge snowstorm coming.
Right,
I know.
Resolution 9 is a spring-like one.
Yeah, so Council President, we stayed within budget for our salt, of course, this year. We had a lot of annoying storms where we had to go out. They were smaller, but we had to use our salt, so we are stocked up. This contract actually is one of the lowest per ton costs I've seen in years, which is great. We've paid as high as $78 a ton in the past, and this contract is well below that $20 or more lower a ton, so we were happy to see that. Hopefully we don't have to spend much next year. We'll load up, and hopefully we don't see any snow.
Right, okay. Hopefully I haven't jinxed us. But anyway, okay. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Any comments or questions from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor of this bundle?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 9.
Okay, Resolution 6311, this authorizes the continuation of the Parklet program for the 4th season, and it runs from April 15th to November 15th, 2019. So spring's just around the corner. The city will install the Parklet, which uses 2 parking spaces along Springfield Avenue. The adjacent property owners will provide routine maintenance at the Parklet as they have in past years. The cost of the plantings would come from an established account for downtown maintenance and landscaping. The materials are all stored, so there's no cost for the Parklet itself. The Parklet space has been enjoyed by the public. It's very popular. When you walk past, it's very well used and very well loved. So I enthusiastically move this resolution.
I second.
Any comments or questions from members of council? Mike.
I completely agree with Councilwoman Fox. I love it. I mean, they're great to sit in, and it's a really nice addition to Springfield Avenue. I guess my question is, can we do another one of these? I would love to engage with SDI around that and where one might be. You know, I know the local businesses really like it. It's just amazing to me that others haven't raised their hand and said this would, you know, public-private partnership, it's not that expensive. City kicked in half to get this one going. Paul, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but it would be great to see another one of these somewhere.
We did actually talk about it at our last meeting, but Paul can give you the details.
So through you, Council President. So we've had interest from 2 other establishments in the downtown. One would be very challenging due to pedestrian vehicular conflict. It's near a crosswalk and would serve a great purpose in that location. However, we evaluated it, and it's not an area that, due to pedestrian safety, we'd want to put one. The other has actually a small public park next to it, so that if we were to put we would need to take spaces as well, parking spaces. But adjacent to that establishment is already a small public park, city park. And we thought that, you know, there are some tables there, and it wasn't the greatest location, knowing that there's already amenities for folks to come out of food establishments in that area and dine outside. We do get a number of, our department does receive a number of inquiries about more if we can, because they love them. The one on Springfield Avenue is heavily used. but we haven't found other areas yet in the downtown that other establishments other than the other two actually came out and requested that we review the area for parklet.
So perhaps what we could maybe do is, I mean, the downtown's not that big, is to look at areas where it might be appropriate, and then maybe perhaps be proactive with some of these businesses and saying, hey, you know, within 50 feet, we could put a parklet, would you be interested? And maybe go from that, go with that strategy.
Yeah, which sites are viable?
Yeah.
Right.
And then see if there's interest on the viable sites.
And the city is done very well. A lot of our public areas downtown do have tables now at Bank Street Park. Last year, we incorporated, you know, some dining tables down there. The Promenade, as you know, when it was refurbished, has dining tables down there. So the city's done, you know, has looked at other areas and worked with SDI on coming up with areas that are public that would be easier to use, you know, versus taking some parking. But we can absolutely do that.
Thank you. Matt, did you have?
Yeah, I was, so just for clarification, the location of the parklet is tied to those two businesses because they contribute to that, the cost of that parklet. I understand. Okay. I was just going to encourage you, I think we could do even more with some of our small parks that we have. I think about the area around Penn Station, for instance, which we see every day, which used to be disgusting and now has a lot of nice tables, and they even have these very durable ping pong tables that you can play and different kind of gaming tables. And I feel like, especially around the Bank Street lot or the Lyric Park, we have extra space there. We could do some more stuff, which I would love to see. I don't know if that's you or that's you, Mark.
It's you or you.
Yeah, that would come
DCS.
through DCS.
Yeah.
Okay, Marjorie, please.
Just following on to that, I think Couse Way is another area. There is kind of a little bump out on the sidewalk there, which might be a great opportunity to place a couple of tables or some kind of bench seating or something. So to kind of hit that end of Springfield Avenue possibly.
And we did look at, the city owns a small piece of property as you go down Couse Way before you cross over to the Cullis lot. In the rear of one of the properties there on Springfield Avenue. And that's been evaluated for also a small parklet. So we can look at that as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know, it's interesting to me because I think when this first came up, there was a fair amount of controversy associated with doing this project. And there were people who came to council meeting, as I recall, and objected to the fact of losing parking spaces. But I think, as we discussed then, as is appropriate now, I think the idea of having a walkable downtown and having the fact that people want to be able to stroll, take a time, sit down, relax, go, move, has great benefits not only to the immediate business owners, but also to all the neighboring business owners. So it's not just simply that we're benefiting two businesses at the expense of others, but rather it has a ripple effect. Right. And when we think, now again, back to the broader picture of what we are doing, we're seeing the development along Franklin Place of new construction that will come online relatively soon. But then also now with Broad Street redevelopment that will come. All of that is geared towards a walkable city, a city where people interact much more on foot, which has been part of our effort to increase pedestrian safety, which goes towards the bike shelter, make bikes more accessible. It is not, people should not think this is not lost upon us, that it has not only a benefit for how we mobility, but also as far as having financial benefits overall to our businesses in doing what we are doing. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 10.
Okay, thank you, Council President. Resolution 6334, this authorizes an increase in height for the proposed Medal of Honor monument on the Village Green. In October, we passed a resolution authorizing the use of public property for the installation of the monument on the southwest quadrant of the green, honoring 2 soldiers from Summit who were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor during World War I. And the initial monument design was supposed to be 4 feet in height. The American Legion Post recently engaged a local architect to draft a final design and plan, and the result is that the dimensions have changed. The final plans propose a 5'7" high pillar of stone from the base to the top of the pillar, and I would refer you to the packet, which had some drawings and renderings of what it would look like. And I think it's going to be a great addition to our monument area, and it's certainly a worthy cause. So I enthusiastically move this resolution.
I second.
Okay. Comments or questions from members of council? I will only say that Henry Bassman was planning on coming tonight to give a presentation, and so if Henry, you're watching, I hope you're feeling better. He was under the weather, and I said to him it wouldn't be necessary for him to come all the way out because we already had the drawings. I agree. I think it's a beautiful rendition, and I believe that David Rosen from the Rosen Group did this pro bono as far as the services that he provided.
That's correct.
To do this, and as we talked about when Henry and Commander Rapp came here last time, you know, it is so rare to have folks who have won the Medal of Honor, and the fact that we have 2 of them in this community is quite an achievement, and it's rightful activity for us to do to honor them in such a way. Okay, any comments from members of the public? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now to the point of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move. I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so then we are off to council member comments and new business.
I thank you. If you'll permit me one moment to talk about trees. So we've heard that Summit lost about 10 to 15% of its trees in the past few years due to storms. And there was an article in the New York Times recently about how New Jersey towns all over, including West Orange, are getting rid of all of their trees. That the liability is there for cracks in the sidewalk that the homeowners don't want. We know that people are afraid of trees falling and knocking out their power or falling on their cars, which certainly has happened. But in that New York Times article, it also pointed out that having a big, beautiful tree in the front yard generally raises the sale price of a home by about $9,000 and reduces its time on the market as well. So we have one neighbor, West Orange, that cuts down 300 trees a year and only plants 100 new ones. And the big thing is that a lot of residents in a lot of towns don't want us to plant trees in the right-of-way. However, I feel that we have a need and a duty to plant more trees in this town, especially considering a recent study I saw that said if we only could plant, which sounds a little large, but if we planted 1 trillion trees across the whole world, it could reduce 10 to 20 years worth of carbon emissions. And that's only however many trees per resident, per person on Earth. So it's not an unachievable goal. And I'd like to do our part for Summit. So what I'm going to ask is that I would hope that our Public Works Department could think of a way that we could find varieties of trees that don't fall over as much, maybe they're smaller trees, I don't know what, but so that, and then work with our communications department to sort of change our messaging about trees to the neighbors and plug the benefits rather than the detractions, and then sort of put a plan together. So instead of planting, I think we're planting about 100 trees a year, 80 trees a year. Instead of that, maybe 800 trees or something between us and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anybody else?
I just was going to let everyone know that this Friday there's going to be a blood donation at Franklin Elementary. Max Goldstein. He was a young man who died of leukemia, I guess, 2 years ago. And they're having a blood drive to recognize him. So I believe it's 2 to 8 at Franklin Elementary. So if you have a vein, give some blood.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody else?
I'll do one more.
Yes, sure.
Just since you've jinxed us already with the snow, I just did want to take the opportunity to thank the excellent Department of Public Works, the Police Department, and the Fire Department for their multiple responses through the whole winter. And it's also a good opportunity, as we were looking at the budget before, to just remind everyone that emergency medical services are also completely funded by donations and staffed by volunteers. So thank you to all the first responders over the winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? I will just note that myself, the mayor, Councilwoman Little, this past weekend went for a hike, if you will, with our neighbors in Chatham Borough. Many years ago, I had gone on a similar hike with our friends in Chatham at that time, with Mayor Dixon at that point in time, to talk about a trail system that loops around between Chatham and Summit, and then ultimately connecting between Summit and New Providence along the Passaic River. And Chatham has been moving forward with their section of the trail system, and they would like us to start moving, hopefully, forward with portions of ours. Obviously, we have a lot of competing interests, but to Councilman Gould's point, they had actually planted 1,500 trees in that area, and not necessarily, talk about an area that's not going to impact, but yet has an impact on carbon footprint and absorbing water to prevent it running off and having an impact on residents. I think there's things that we can do. I think one of the first steps we will have probably is during the Earth Day cleanup, start cleaning up the area around there. And we'll move forward, as we go through this year, we're thinking about how we can get this done. But it would be a great amenity for the businesses and people who work in that area, as well as the residences, that are near River Road. There would be a loop system there, and I think it certainly is that the Passaic River, and unfortunately what has happened is we have ended up separating the Passaic River from the community because we have all these buildings right adjacent to it. But it is, when you walk down by the Passaic, when you get a chance, and especially the Passaic up here, it is a beautiful river. And it can be a very therapeutic and calming and nice feeling when you get by the Passaic. And so I think we will hopefully work towards getting folks access to it, which reminds me of the point that the mayor started off, and I remind folks to come on Saturday, the 23rd at 9:30, see groundbreaking of the Free Market Building, which I am ecstatic about. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.